Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. Cade Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs. Week 11 of the college football season finally here. Another fun week, some massive battles in the SEC. A lot to look forward to, but before we get into this video, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to get notified when new videos come out, and leave a comment down below. We're at 92 subscribers right now as of when we're recording this. If we can just get 8 more, get to that triple digits, the big 100 before the end of the season, preferably the end of the year. It wouldn't seem like a lot, but we would sincerely appreciate it. And also a quick note before we get things fully rolling. This is being recorded on Monday night, so if the rankings look a little bit different in this video than what you'll see when this comes out later on in the week, that's why. This is still the last time you'll see the AP poll rankings probably used on this thing. But either way, just the quick disclaimer there if some other news changes. But Tyler, should be a great week of football indeed.
Absolutely. We get action starting this week. You get the college football playoff ranking, the first one. Who cares about election night? We all know it's about the college football playoff ranking.
Exactly.
So, yeah, should be a fun one.
Exactly. You know, that's the real election interference going on, Tyler. Putting the playoff rankings and election night on the same day. What are we doing here?
And NFL trade deadline.
Exactly. Everything's going on. And you can just watch some hockey. There's no NBA tomorrow night, though. But either way, Tyler, the first game to get into the massive one, well, one of two massive ones in the SEC, Alabama and LSU, a top 15 matchup in Death Valley. Alabama, a 2.5-point favorite as of right now, in a game that, you know, Tyler, dare I say, this is a playoff elimination game. Whoever loses gets lost number 3. The stakes could not be higher in a game like this.
This feels like a WWF loser leave towns match right here, buddy. That's what this is building up to in my mind. Because, yeah, definitely elimination game. And I bet you the team that loses this, the fan base is going to be saying, hey, you know, we might need to consider somebody else that could actually get it done in the big moments. Not that that's right or going to happen, but that's just how this one's shaping up.
Yeah, it's one of those both teams coming off of bye weeks. It's going to be an interesting matchup because, I mean, to me, one of the keys to this thing, Tyler, it's how well can you run the ball. Always it feels like when you get to November, the more physical team is going to win. That team is going to prevail, you know, not just in this game, but usually the rest of the season. LSU, dead last in the SEC in terms of running the ball, only 115 yards on the ground per game. They give up about 130 on average. Compared to Alabama, they can run it a lot better. 177 on the ground. They give up 144, though. That's not great. That's average to below average in the SEC. So if LSU wants to win this game, statistically speaking, it's going to be what they've been doing all year. Garrett Nussmeier having to sling the ball. LSU, one of the better passing offenses in the SEC. If LSU can get that air game going, try to beat Bama one-on-one deep. You saw Georgia able to exploit that a little bit when they played Alabama in the second half. Tennessee had those matchups, just couldn't get the connections on a few overthrown or underthrown passes. That, I feel like, is going to have to be how LSU wins this game.
Yeah, I'd say so. And they've got the tools to do it, right? We've kind of talked about their passing game can be explosive at times, somewhat, though it has been erratic as well. So they could kind of shore that up, be a little bit more consistent. I definitely would say that the Tigers have a good chance of this one to come out and try to compete early.
And it's one of those that, you know, on the Alabama side of things, it comes down to Jalen Milroe. If you know, stop me if you've heard this one before, Tyler. We've talked about this enough times. If Jalen Milroe plays well and doesn't make any big mistakes, he can make a few little mistakes, but just don't make that massive, monumental turnover or bad pass or a fumble or something along those lines, and you've got a pretty good shot to win this game. Because you look at, you know, the efficiencies, things like that, you kind of get to some of those numbers. Alabama on paper is the better team than LSU. Statistically, on paper, they are. But unfortunately, you don't play games on paper. You play them on a field, and you play them in a stadium that is ridiculous to play at. Death Valley at night, never a fun place to try to win at.
No, it's not. That really it becomes more and more important, in a road environment like this to play that efficient football like you're talking about. When you look at the key factors, Football Scoop had a really kind of interesting article on this. There's two key factors, Cade, that if you are ahead in those departments, I guess for a game, you could say you've got a 92% chance to win the game, and that's to be able to obviously win the turnover battle and run the ball better than your opponent. Sounds cliche, not earth shattering, but that's what the statistics show since they started tracking it and looking back at games. It's about 2016 is what their example size was. That was over 300 games. You're talking a 92% win percentage. Now, there's some exceptions there, but still, that's pretty evident that sometimes cliches are cliche for a reason.
Absolutely. It's one of those that, it's tried and true. It's an effective method, Tyler. Like you said, when you get that 92% success right there, obviously a lot of teams are taking advantage of that. And I think LSU will be no different. The opportunities will definitely be there for LSU in this one. It's just the one thing I worry about for LSU in this game is you look at what Texas A&M was able to do to them 2 weeks ago. Dual threat quarterback in Marcel Reed, Jalen Milroe fits that bill to a T of a guy that can absolutely just kill you with his legs, sometimes better than he can with his arm. It's going to be a difficult time for LSU to win this one. And in the notes, it's basically, I have it as simple as this. If you believe in Death Valley at night, LSU can and will find a way to win this game. I think that's going to come down. That's going to be the big thing in this one, Tyler. So many times this year, we've seen the pattern. And, when we've talked about it, we've joked about it on this show. It seems that in these big SEC games, it's the home team finding a way to get the job done. And Tyler, I think that's no different here. Even though I think Alabama's the better team, I don't think they're going to be the better team on Saturday night in Baton Rouge.
Interesting. I think really we'll know early on was what type of Jalen Milroe you're getting. This is really on his shoulders. Like you kind of pointed out, LSU was kind of done in by that mobile quarterback in Marcel Reed against Texas A&M. So can Milroe be something similar to that, and can they exploit some of those same weaknesses, or has uh, LSU been able to kind of shore that up a little bit in preparation for this game? That's what I'm curious to see. I think it really does come down to potentially not just the arm of Jalen Milroe, but the legs.
Absolutely. So, Tyler, who do you got in this one? This is going to be one that I'm interested to see where
Oh,
you go with this. I'm not going to let you get away with just, here are the keys here.
I mean, really, this is another classic example where if this is Nick Saban coaching this team for Alabama, I feel good about Alabama. Maybe not the prettiest win, but coming in and getting it done. Do we give Kalen DeBoer that credit, that trust? I don't know if I'll give him that, but I think for these players that have been through these, do or die situations when it comes to Alabama over the last couple of years, they've shown that clutch factor, been able to keep themselves in the mix. So give me Alabama. I'm going to take the road team in this one. It's going to be tough to win in Death Valley, don't get me wrong, but I think Alabama edges out LSU.
Okay. Okay. See, that's where I was trying to get to. I was trying to think the way you were getting there word wise. I was thinking, okay, I think Tyler's leaning Alabama on this one. I just want to get you on the record. So one of us will be correct. So that's good.
Correct.
That's good to know. Sometimes it's better to split it that way. But
It's usually me in those situations. What?
okay.
Okay.
Okay. But either way, we've got to get to one that I think we will agree on. Georgia and Ole Miss, the next game. Georgia, right now, only a 2.5 point favorite going to Oxford. There's a reason for that. Ole Miss put on probably their best offensive performance of the season. 63 points they dropped on Arkansas. 63-31 Ole Miss was able to win last week. And for Georgia coming in a rough game, it feels weird to say a rough game when it's a 14-point win over Florida. That feels like that should not be something you say about Georgia, but that's the narrative coming into this game. Still number 2 in the country, still trying to find their footing a little bit at the top of the SEC standings. You want to keep it that way. You've got the big matchup with Tennessee looming later on down the road. But can Ole Miss play well at home? It's going to be the big SEC afternoon game, which should be fun environment there in Oxford, but can Ole Miss throw the ball well against the Georgia secondary that can make the big plays? They can get the stops. It's just going to be who wins that battle there between Georgia and Ole Miss when it comes to Ole Miss throwing the ball. And then you flip it around the other way for Georgia. When you look at their offense, it's one of Ole Miss is the best rushing defense in the SEC. Statistically, they are. They are the number one rushing defense when it comes to yards per game. They shut people down. Can Georgia get it going? They have not been a good running team, which is incredibly weird to say. That's what you expect out of Georgia, but they've had to rely on Carson Beck a lot more. And can Carson Beck stop throwing multiple interceptions in a game? That's going to be another key story in this one. If Ole Miss can force those turnovers and hang around, there's a good chance they can win this game, Tyler. It's just, can Georgia fix those mistakes quickly?
Yeah, and I think the run game that you highlighted there's really the key factor for me to watch in this because Carson Beck is a good quarterback, but I don't know if he's proven quite to be that guy to where okay, run game's not there and I could just carry you on my back until we figure it out. He's had moments where looks like he's shown flashes of that, but as we've seen this season, a bit erratic, right, in terms of the decision making that's led to some picks. So almost desperation at times. So I'm curious to see if he can get around that in this contest, or if it's one of those where, like we talked about last week, you get to the end of the game, you go, man, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this guy being essentially the decider of how far Georgia really goes this season.
Again, that's just an incredible statement that I don't think either of us would have said, that Carson Beck is going to be the driving factor for how well Georgia plays in these games. But just looking at it in this one, this feels like a good right game for Georgia. And it feels weird to say that. It's a top 16 matchup here. But Georgia has the opportunities, I feel like, to present that, hey, that was last week. Yes, we've been inconsistent at times. If we bring our A game, we can dominate Ole Miss. And I truly think they can. I think they could come in and beat Ole Miss up if they play their A game. But we haven't seen that full, consistent game from Georgia for a while. And I think if they let him up, Ole Miss is going to be able to hang around in this one. It's going to get tight at the end, but I still think Georgia finds a way to get the job done in this one.
Yeah, this kind of sets up in two ways for me. I think it's almost a letdown spot for Ole Miss, right? You're feeling really good after what you did to Arkansas last week. Everything offensively seemingly went right. You just could do no wrong. And I won't say false security because I do think Ole Miss will have their chances in this game, but I think it comes down to one of those situations where things start getting a little tougher, right? And that's where mistakes start happening. Jackson Dart all of a sudden doesn't look as outstanding as he did in that game against Arkansas because the road's a little tougher, and you get some adversity. And at the end of the day, Georgia is going to find a way to win it. I do agree with that, and I won't say comfortably, but I could see a situation where it's back and forth for a good chunk of the game, 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, and Georgia defines those key plays towards the end of the game to make it, essentially 10-point, 14-point type game.
Yeah, it does feel like, at least to me, it's going to be one of those. The statement of the game coming out of this one's going to be, okay, Georgia's defense shut down Ole Miss's offense enough to win this game,
Right.
despite any, mistakes the offense may or may not make.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see a situation where again Carson Beck's not exactly perfect the entire game, has some shaky moments, but because that defense, like I said, just able to do enough to really get Ole Miss off the rhythm long enough for Georgia to secure that victory in this one.
Well, Tyler, that brings us to the last big game of the week, and it's one that I think a lot of people aren't going to talk about. It's a late night game, BYU and Utah. And if you're thinking, well, what in the world are you talking about, Cade? Utah's 4-4. They don't have an offense, and they're playing number 9 BYU. BYU's only a 4-point favorite in this game, going to Salt Lake City, first time since 2018 that we've had the Holy War back in Salt Lake City. First time they've played in a couple of years anyway. Utah always plays better in Salt Lake City than they do in Provo. That's just kind of expected in a rivalry game. But this is a game that I think outside of the state of Utah, a lot of people don't think about this as a big national rivalry full of hatred, but this is one. This is one that things can get nasty and they could get nasty quick. I still think Utah, they have that solid defense that's played elite at times and is really the only reason Utah's look competitive in a lot of the games they've played. That's kept them around. Obviously, Utah's offense, we don't need to talk about it a whole lot because you know what it is. It's a whole lot of nothing. If they can get 21 points, it's almost a miracle, Tyler. It is, unfortunately for them, just horrendous to try to watch. But for BYU, it's more weird for me in this one. How well do they come out in this thing? It's a rivalry game. You're in a hostile environment. The muss can get loud. It's going to be intriguing to see how they handle this environment because I don't think they've played in that type of environment this season. And for some of these kids, they've never experienced this rivalry before. So it's going to be fun to see how they gel into it.
Yeah, and I think the rivalry factor here is why the spread's so close, simply because, like you mentioned, this can get very nasty in terms of the emotions of the game. Yeah, they haven't played a long time, but this is a fan base in BYU that feels, Utah has kind of turned their nose, maybe, right, to uh, to the Cougars in the recent years with them going to the Pac-12 and being able to have the success they have. It's almost a sense of, Utah is almost like, well, we've moved past you, right? In that sense, or the need to include you in the history, if you will. And so, a lot to prove for BYU. They come into this saying on top, they're riding high, got really a chance to kind of rub it in Utah's face because the talk in the offseason, Cade, was for the Utah fans, oh, we're going to come in, be the face of the Big 12, right? That was the goal. They were picked first in the conference in the preseason. And here's where we're at, where the Cougs are actually the ones standing atop the conference. And so a big potential statement to be made for BYU in that sense. But as we've seen with teams, and these are humans, right? And we got to note that because sometimes that moment does get too big, right? You get yourself too psyched up. We've seen that on the high school side, Kate. We've seen it on the college side, sometimes even the pros, depending on what the moment is. So I think that point of, how does BYU come out and handle the environment early will tell us a lot about what this type of game will be. And the other thing to hear is, and I not say that you're wrong about the Utah offense, it's not so much that it's dead; it's just one dimensional heavily. Mike Bernard, obviously, in that run game, has the only chance. That's the only chance they have of really moving the ball. So, can they control the clock enough and keep the defense rested? I'm not sure they score a lot, but can you at least extend some drives and keep your defense fresh enough to give BYU some problems?
Yeah, and that's where Utah's going to have to do it. And luckily for them, BYU has struggled with that in certain games in terms of stopping the run. I think Micah Bernard has the ability to play well in this one. I think he comes out and starts off strong early. I really would not be shocked if this is one of those Utah comes out, they win the first quarter. You go into halftime thinking, okay, is this really going to happen today? Is Utah going to get this big upset? But the later we go on into the game, BYU starts to get a lot more comfortable knowing, okay, we've been in this situation how many times this year where we're just in a back and forth situation. We know we're going to get to the fourth quarter and we're going to win the ball game. And I think that's what happens in this one. Utah suffers another loss late in the game and BYU moves on to 9-0.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. I think BYU, you go to that game against Oklahoma State where Cowboys come out and give you a really tough challenge, at home, and you're able to close that one out in stunning fashion. So they're battle tested. They can handle some of that adversity. I think that will benefit them well for this contest against Utah.
And then, Tyler, it is finally time to move on over to Upset Alert. Upset Alert, a very simple system we've got here. The three types of upset alerts you can have, kind of based off weather. We've got the upset advisory, the watch, and the warning. Usually we like to give out just watches or advisories on the show. In the first game I've got to get to, Tyler, it is an upset advisory for Clemson at Virginia Tech because the Hokies, they're not a bad team. They're no slouch. They're nothing that'll shock you. They're 5-4. But the Tigers only 6.5-point favorites on the road at Lane Stadium, a place that can get loud. Tyler, an interesting thing about this game, two of the best teams in the ACC when it comes to rushing offense, Clemson number 1 in the conference, Virginia Tech number 3. They both run for over 200 yards per game. Clemson's offense is coming off an ugly performance against Louisville, a game where they'd scored 7 points in 3 quarters. They'd had 2 field goals blocked. Special teams miscues. Offense wasn't doing anything. Defense was struggling to stop the Cardinals. Everything that could have went wrong. And so now it's, how do you bounce back against Virginia Tech? Do you use this as an, okay, we're going to come out angry, we're going to come out fueled, knowing we're still in the ACC race. They're only that one game behind Miami and SMU. They're by no means out of this thing. Or do we see it get to Clemson? And I don't think that's going to happen. That's why this is an upset advisory. Virginia Tech has struggled with the run most of the season in terms of defending it, and that's why I think this is going to stay Clemson's way. I like them to win this game, but at the same time, if they come out and sputter around again, Virginia Tech will have the opportunity to jump on them and make this a ball game that some people think is going to be tight, but could turn into a Virginia Tech upset.
Yeah, and I think the curiosity here is absolutely, and how does Clemson respond to last week? Do they not necessarily lay down, but do they come out with another lackluster effort, kind of, feeling that effect of, oh man, we've really put ourselves behind the 8 ball in the race for the ACC? Or do you see that spirited, hey, you know what, we're going to try to do our best to regain some control in this race the best way they can? So I'm curious to see that. It felt like they were really starting to hit their stride before that loss last week. So, and this Virginia Tech team is just wildly inconsistent. That's the only thing here. Dare I say, it almost feels like a good chance for Clemson to bounce back and make a pretty good statement in the wake of that loss last week.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like that's why it's only an advisory here, because I feel like more than likely we're going to get Clemson tries to dominate in this one. Definitely, I think they cover in this. This could be, a 14, 17, 21 point type of game. But if that good Virginia Tech team shows up that took Miami to the wire, that was able to beat up Boston College, if that team shows up and Clemson comes in stumbling again, things could get ugly the other way really quick.
Yeah, it could. And that's where, if you're Dabo, this is where you make your money, right? Get your team mentally prepared to be able to battle that type of Virginia Tech team. That's what I'm preaching to the guys. Hey, you better be ready to see a team that like you said, took some really good squads to the wire. Uh, so I'm really interested to see how Clemson responds. The first, probably half of the first quarter, you'll get a good sense of their body language and their tone. I think this one early.
Absolutely. And so the only other game I have here on Upset Alert today is South Carolina and Vanderbilt. And there's a good reason for this. This is what we like to call a double upset or a guaranteed upset, one where Vanderbilt is the ranked opponent, but they are the home underdogs. South Carolina, 3.5-point favorites in this one. So either South Carolina wins and a ranked team gets upset, or Vanderbilt wins and we have a Vegas upset, hence the meaning of double upset there. But either way, Tyler, this should be an interesting one. South Carolina obviously coming off the big momentum win over Texas A&M. The not smack down there, but turned into one late in the game, 44-20. South Carolina, an elite defensive front. They're number 4 in the country in total defensive efficiency is South Carolina. Can Vanderbilt hold up against that South Carolina defensive front? And if they can, they've got a good shot at winning this one. Vandy is an efficient offense. The numbers don't wow you, but how they play, chewing up that time of possession, trying to just stay as cool and collected as you can, knowing this is an offense built to take a while, run the ball. Diego Pavia is going to have a big play or two, can do it with his legs, can use his arm when he needs to, doesn't always have to. You saw that a lot in the Auburn game where he didn't really have to do a lot there, went 9 for 22 passing, still was able to get 17 points on the board there. I'm intrigued to see how that battle works out because South Carolina, they're going to get their points on offense. It's just, can they slow down or shut down Vandy?
Yeah, and I think the bigger, challenge in this is that this might be And this is, I know, a wild statement when you think about it a little bit, but this might be the best challenge as far as a front seven Diego Pavia has seen this season. And that's saying something with the defenses he's already played. But I mean, the South Carolina front, Cade, we've seen it. It is legit. When they get cooking, boy, they are tough to deal with if you're an offensive line, a nightmare at times. And if you are South Carolina, that's the strength of this game. Can you get Diego Pavia and that offense under duress enough to really affect their flow, right? We've seen Vanderbilt, as you pointed out, be able to kind of grind out some games. But I think this will be a whole new challenge. And I'm curious to see what Vandy is able to cook up because if they can't handle it early and it's evident, this might be a big, big day for South Carolina to show, hey, that win wasn't a fluke last week against A&M.
And unfortunately for Vanderbilt, as much as we like to keep the Vandy dream alive, that they can continue to get this big winning streak going, I think this is going to be a scenario where South Carolina is just too much for them. They overpower them, and South Carolina gets another statement win over a ranked opponent. Shows that, hey, we might be one of the best 3-loss teams in the country. I won't say they are the best because Alabama or LSU will have a loss, so South Carolina lost to both of them, but either way, South Carolina, I think they get the job done in this one. Would I be mad if Vandy won? Of course I wouldn't. That'd be funny as could be. Vandy's an amazing story, but I think that story takes another shot here. Give me South Carolina to get the technical upset over a ranked team, but favored to win it anyway.
This is where I'll differentiate. I think as much as I talked about the Vandy offense having to succeed, people disrespect Vandy's defense a little bit, I think, at this point in the season. And South Carolina hasn't been super consistent on that side of the ball. They've had some good moments, but they're prone, as we've seen at times, to giving the game away on that side of the ball, right? Making some crucial errors. I think at the end of the day, that's where this is decided. Defensive slugfest with South Carolina, I think, making the last big mistake in this one.
Okay, okay, I like it. But Tyler, we go from one segment to another here, from upset alert to the best of the rest, the final few games to close out what should be a fun week number 11. And we've got to talk about Miami going to Georgia Tech. Early game in Atlanta, Miami an 11-point favorite in this one. And I think, Tyler, almost the more intriguing question is how many touchdowns or points, even if we want to go that route, is Miami going to be down by and eventually come back and win in this game? Because I think we're probably both in agreement Miami's going to win. There's a pretty good shot they're going to find a way to cover. It's just, Miami's going to get down at some point. It's just how much of a comeback are we going to see again from the Canes?
Yeah, they've just been that cardiac team. We joke about it where it seems like the team's in on, all right, how can we maximize Cam Ward's, Heisman appeal? Um, and I don't know. This one, I just don't know what to make this Miami team. They're the one that has stumped me all season long, especially in that top 10, right? That it's just they go on how Cam Ward goes, and that's seemingly quarter by quarter when it comes to the squad. So, um, I, I mean, Miami, I want to say that, okay, you got some weaknesses that can't be exposed, but do they really? Or is it just all big conspiracy to get Cam Ward some great Heisman numbers? I don't know, kid.
I don't know either. I think Georgia Tech will definitely have their moments in this game. You've got to look at this the same way kind of Cal played for 3 quarters. If you can control the game just a little bit, Cal wasn't able to run the ball. Georgia Tech has the ability to do it. If you can just punch it away a little bit, set up that big pass, attack Miami's secondary, you can hang around in this one. You just can't do what Duke did and turn the ball over 4 times. If you can play your game, this will be a fight till the end, but I still think Miami is just going to overpower Georgia Tech at some point, make that big play or two that swings all the momentum in favor of Miami. And I think the Canes are going to be looking at a 10-0 start.
Yeah, no, I think I'm in agreement with you here. Like you said, Georgia Tech's got some of those pieces to maybe make this a game, right? The run game. You get just a little bit of that occasional big play to splash in with that through the air, control the clock. That will give you a chance, but Miami's proven to be super explosive when they want to be. So I think it'll be really tough to hold off the Canes in this one for Georgia Tech.
Absolutely. But from the ACC, we go to the Big Ten because Indiana already 9-0. Great start. Never been done before for Indiana. It feels like if they can get to that 10-0 mark, and they've got to go through Michigan. Now, fortunately, Indiana 14-point favorite in this game. Michigan still cannot throw the ball well. They're getting better. Their offense is still in the works, I guess, which is not something you want to say in the 10th game of your season. But that's where Michigan is right now. Just got blown out by Oregon. Indiana showed that they can come back from a double-digit deficit. Did it against Michigan State. Got down 10-0, 147-10. It was no problem for the Hoosiers. And I think this is another statement game for Indiana. Every game is going to be a statement at this point in the season. We'll know, obviously, a lot more when the college football playoff rankings come out of how much respect Indiana has or does not have. And I think Indiana uses that to their full advantage in this one. They go, okay, we're playing a traditional blue blood who is struggling this year. We have them right where we want them. Let's just run the score up. Well, not run the score up, but let's make a mark on Michigan here and prove that this is how good we are. I think that's what Indiana's able to do in this one, Tyler. As good as Michigan's defense has been at times this year, I think Indiana continues to just chip away at them, and they get the big explosive plays later on in the game. I like Indiana to win this one big.
I don't know big, but if Indiana could win this by 17 or so, I think that's a big enough statement. You mentioned they handled the kind of early deficit well against Michigan State. I think that was really telling of this Indiana team's in the right mindset, right? Not phased by that moment and roaring back and just pulling away. So I liked what I saw there from Indiana in that sense. I think that serves them well going into this one because you probably have a similar situation. Michigan will be able, with the talent they have on the defensive side of the ball, maybe throw some things at you that you haven't seen or haven't seen ran as well this year with other opponents. But it seems like Indiana really is a team that's able to adjust, able to navigate and find ways to be successful despite some of those challenges that a team may present. And they haven't, panicked. It seems like yet. So until I see that panic out of them, I'm in agreement with you. I want to trust what Indiana's doing. They remain undefeated and set up that huge matchup with Ohio State.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you said you didn't know about Indiana winning big. 17 for me would be big. That's 3 possession win in
Big
my
enough.
book.
Okay. All right. Fair
That
enough.
you get above that, you're winning big in my book. So either way, we're both in agreement. Indiana should get the job done there. Just a few more games to get to. Got to go over to the Big 12 for an odd one where Iowa State is only a 3-point favorite against 2-6 Kansas. This is not a traditional 2-6 Kansas, though. This is a Kansas team that has led in the fourth quarter in all 8 games they've played this season. Very up and down in terms of you see their potential, Kansas, you do, and then they find a way to lose the game. With the exception of Lindenwood and Houston, that's what Kansas has been this season. Several just key moments where they cannot get the job done. And you're playing an Iowa State team that just got upset. And it's kind of that same deal we talked about in the upset alert segment with Clemson. How well does Iowa State come out in this game? Do they tighten up, put their foot down, say, we're not having this today? We're going to get a win here in Kansas City. Keep in mind, this is a technical neutral site game, but really it's a home game for Kansas in Arrowhead Stadium. But either way, this should be a weird one, Tyler. I feel like this is going to be one of those classic Big 12 head scratchers where, like last week for Iowa State, you look at it and go, there's no way Kansas is winning this game in the fourth quarter. It's going to be someone who doesn't know what this Kansas team does. And then Iowa State finds a way to pull away late in a weird, weird game.
Yeah, Iowa State needs this one desperately, right? So if you're Matt Campbell, that's got to be the message. Hey, you throw away last week, forget about it, short-term memory. You've got to get it done this week. You get back to playing, some of that more bully ball style that you've been able to have this year. Octo Beck has come out and, make his plays, be consistent, give his offense a chance to string together some drives. Because I feel like if you could do that against this Kansas team, as you pointed out, they just have a problem with finishing this year. They've let those games slip. So if you're Iowa State, you get back to playing ball where you're controlling that clock and you're doing what needs to be done defensively. I wouldn't say a comfortable win, but I think in the end they could be able to give themselves that dub and get back on the right track.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see how Iowa State gets that run game going again because I think this is kind of the perfect game to do that. Kansas has struggled with that at times this year. And I think if Iowa State can just get that momentum going early, establish the run, you can get Rocco Bet going a little bit later in the game. I think Iowa State, they don't win big, but they find a way to win. And at this rate, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and it's a team that has proven at least at points this season at Iowa State that they've been able to close, and Kansas just unfortunately hasn't to this point.
Yeah, and then the final game to get to, Tyler, we are finally talking about them in a preview segment and just not talking about them when we get to power rankings. It's Army. 8-0 Army,
Yeah.
number 18 in the country, a 6-point favorite going down to Denton to take on the Mean Green of North Texas. A fun game that should be really more interesting than you'd think. You look at some of the games North Texas has played, they put up a lot of points. They've given up a decent amount of points. You look at it, 52-44 loss to Memphis, 45-37 loss to Tulane. They had the bye last week. North Texas is going to come out knowing this is their last chance to get that massive statement win on the season, still trying to get to that 6th win for bowl eligibility, are the Mean Green. And for Army, we know who Army is. Only 11 points given up per game in a fantastic defense. It's just going to be, is Army fully healthy this week? Daly is supposed to play in this game. They're hoping he's back for this one because if he's not, North Texas has the ability to pull the upset out here. But with a healthy Army team, I think they find a way to turn this one into a shootout, something they're not as comfortable with. But I think if that run game gets going, Army should get the job done.
What are you implying here, Kate? I don't like your tone. You're saying a little anti-Army on
Okay.
this.
I'm not sounding
I don't know if
anti-Army.
I'm
I'm
down with
just
it.
saying if they're not healthy, North Texas can put points on the board. Army hasn't seen an offense like this year yet. I mean, you look at the last 5 games Army's played. Air Force, East Carolina, UAB, Tulsa, and Temple. None of those are offenses that are going to really jump out at you. North Texas, Chandler Morris, able to sling the ball around. This could be one of those fun games. If I did not live 5+ hours away, this would be a fun one to go to, Tyler. That's all I'm implying.
Are you implying that Chandler Morris stands a chance against the great wall that is the Army defense?
Possibly.
I
We'll
don't know.
have to see.
I don't know about
We'll
that,
have to
Cade.
see. It'll be a fun one, middle of the day on ESPN2. I still like Army to
Can't
win the
believe you're
game,
doubting
Tyler.
Army.
I'm
I don't
not
know.
doubting Army. I'm just saying the
And
facts,
the
Tyler.
anti-American, no less ahead of Election Day. I don't know if I trust this one, Kade.
Well, Tyler, you can give your spiel on behalf of how Army's going to win this game by inserts your score here.
No, I think you're right in your takes. I think you'd love to see Bryson Daly back if you're Army in this, give you a little bit of that confidence, just because he's such a great leader. He's shown that throughout the season, continually bringing that energy, and you can tell the guys really rally around him when he makes those big plays or feed off that. So you'd love to see him back this week, but Army proved last week, at least without him, that they can get it done. It wasn't necessarily flashy against Air Force, not a great Air Force team, but you still got the win. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt till they show otherwise, Bryson Daly or not.
All right, and you're the one saying I'm sounding anti-American. Then you say you agree with my points. This guy. This guy. My goodness. Either way, should be a fantastic game nonetheless between Army and North Texas. But folks, that will do it for the preview of week 11 of the college football season. As always, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to always be notified when new videos come out. And feel free to leave a comment down below, especially for when we do the recap video. Tyler, you were talking about the comment you'd like to see. Give us your nomination for Champion of Life of the Week or Fraud Alert, depending on, a team you thought played well or played absolutely terrible. We always like to hear things like that, so feel free to leave it down in the comments.
Absolutely. It's always more fun when we get other people joining in on the conversation.
Absolutely. But folks, until next time, have a good one, everybody.